The words socialist and secular were not included in the original preamble of the Indian Constitution. So was India not envisioned a secular country? What made Indira Gandhi include these words in the preamble? Should the preamble of the Indian Constitution have the words secular and socialist? Many people, most of them aligned with the BJP, have been asking why it can't be removed. In this week's Let Me Explain, I look at why the argument in favor of removing the word secular is wrong, because even if it's not in the preamble, the makers of the Constitution imagined India as a secular country. Let Me Explain is a weekly show in which I explain issues, controversies and much more. Do tune in every Friday to watch the show and also become a News Minute subscriber so you can come for our edit meetings where you can give us story ideas and also tell me what topic you want me to take up in my next episode of Let Me Explain. Also, don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends and family. So the initial draft of the preamble said, "We the people of India having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign democratic republic." In 1976, in what has been the only amendment ever made to the preamble, the Indira Gandhi government changed it to, "We the people of India having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular democratic republic." The Constituent Assembly held discussions on the basis of the draft constitution, and there are quite a few times that God, religion and secularism were discussed. On November 15, 1948, K.T. Shah, a member of the Constituent Assembly, moved an amendment to insert the words secular, federal and socialist in Article 1 of the Constitution. Shah was an alumnus of the London School of Economics, a professor in Bombay University and a very active member of the Constituent Assembly. K.T. Shah's arguments were that if India is a secular state, then why can't the term be added in the Constitution itself? He thought that this could guard against any possibility of misunderstanding or misapprehension. He admitted that India was not a socialist state at the time, but he also said that it should be inserted as an aspiration. It was B.R. Ambedkar who replied to K.T. Shah, but he only spoke of the word socialist and not secular. Ambedkar intended the Constitution to provide the framework for governance, but he insisted that for democracy to work, people should decide on social and economic policies according to the prevailing circumstances. He also said that majority of people may today think that a socialist society is better than a capitalist one, but they can change their opinion later. Ambedkar also said the fundamental rights and directive principles laid down by the Constitution are socialist in nature. So as you can see, Ambedkar mainly addressed the bit on socialism. Anyway, the motion was defeated. In another instance, H.V. Kamath from Madhya Pradesh moved a resolution to include "In the name of God, we the people of India" in the Constitution. Ambedkar immediately asked for the amendment to be withdrawn. That India is a secular state has been reiterated by many members of the Constituent Assembly. Nehru spoke about secularism on 26 May 1949 while discussing the issue of minorities. He said that while we sincerely want to embrace secularism, the term itself, secularism, is sometimes used without understanding the significance. For Nehru, a secular democracy was an ideal that we should aim at, one where every Indian can recognize the prejudices and communal biases even in those who identify themselves as secular. So it's clear both Nehru and Ambedkar believed in separating the state from religion. So why was the word secular not added in the preamble? According to historian Ian Copeland, both Nehru and Ambedkar understood that Western Enlightenment secularism, which stressed on separation of the state and religion, will not work in a country like India. So they decided that instead of using the term fraudulently, it's better to not use it at all. There are other historians who believe that there was not enough consensus on many issues relating to God, religion and secularism in the Constituent Assembly. Historian Madhavan Nalpat says Nehru felt secularism was not a happy word. It does not mean that we're anti-religious, it just means India is not formally entitled to religion as a nation. Professor Vivek Kumar, who teaches at the GNU, says that Ambedkar and many other members of the Constituent Assembly felt that there were enough provisions in the Constitution itself, including Articles 25, 29 and 30, which say that minorities will have the right to propagate their language, religion and culture. So, where is the need for the usage of the term secular in the preamble? Because we've already incorporated it with specifics, not just as a slogan. But there was another important reason why India could not have been secular in the strict sense of the word. Secularism means equidistance from all religions and respect for all religions. Most Western democracies say that they'll not intervene in any religion or any religious practices. But in India, the constitution had to intervene in many practices for the sake of social justice. For example, interventions had to be made to bring Dalits into the fold. Laws had to be made to allow Dalits inside temples and public spaces. On the question of socialism, Professor Vivek says that the directive principles argue the state will not allow monopolization of wealth and resources of the country. So equality is not just a slogan, but equal opportunity. A mere philosophical statement will not enforce it, articles will. Ambedkar thought that it will not take us anywhere if it's just in the preamble and not substantiated with opportunities. Now to the question of why Indira Gandhi introduced the words. This, according to most historians and politicians, was purely political. Constitutional expert Subhash Kashyap says Indira Gandhi added the word socialist to send a message politically that she stood for the poor. Remember that in 1976, Indira Gandhi was facing criticism from all quarters over the imposition of the emergency. So she wanted to rebrand her image as a leader who's pro-poor and pro-masses. Socialism was added as a thrust to Indira Gandhi's Garibi Hatao program. This was also in response to the opposition she faced politically by Jai Prakash Narayan. As for the word secular, Subhash Kashyap says that it was meant for the minorities in the context of the birth control programs of the emergency period. Dalits and Muslims formed a large portion of Congress's base, so the idea was to bring them back into the fold. It's not as if the constitution wasn't secular or socialist before the words were added. India has been secular even before the 42nd Amendment and continues to be so even after it. Now to the real question. Can merely removing the words secular or socialist change the way our country is? India's secular character is firmly etched through fundamental rights and the directive principles of the state policy. Merely changing the words cannot undo that. And those who quote Nehru and Ambedkar selectively should know that Nehru once told the Constituent Assembly that if the majority community would not have learnt any lessons from the past, if they felt that just by the strength of numbers they could treat minorities with contempt, then it was wrong. For Ambedkar, the word secularism focused exclusively on the Hindu-Muslim equation and was neglectful of caste oppression. Sankaran Krishnan, a professor of political science, recalled that in an article Ambedkar had written, he spoke about how the population of India is generally classified on linguistic or religious basis, and that Dalits were excluded in this narrative. So if we were to make India a secular country like Ambedkar envisioned, then it means equality to all its citizens. Tell us what you thought about this video in the comment section, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want me to change, and more importantly, what issues you want me to take up in the next episode. You can also look me up on Twitter, Pooja Prasanna 4, or you could write to me at pooja@thenewsminute.com. We always welcome ideas, feedback, and any kind of suggestions. Also, don't forget to tune in for another episode of Let Me Explain next Friday.